In the battle against loot boxes, we've had victories and we have had losses. Unfortunately, today is one of those days in which we'll be talking about a loss. So in case you've forgotten, back in February 13th, 2018, media outlet Hawaii Tribune Herald reported the story that Hawaii State Representative Chris Lee introduced 4 anti-loot box bills, 2 pairs with a House and a Senate bill each. One of the pairs aimed to prohibit the sale of games with loot boxes or similar mechanics to anyone younger than 21 years old, while the other pair aimed to require game publishers to prominently label games containing such features with a clear warning about the harmful nature while disclosing the odds of obtaining chance-based rewards. The goal, according to Chris, was to have enough of the market react so that the industry would have to respond and change its practices. Unfortunately, it was recently reported by Hawaii Tribune Herald on March 24th, 2018, that these loot box bills failed to advance. According to the article, 2 House bills and 1 Senate bill failed to meet final deadlines since they were introduced back in January. House Bill 2686, the one that would have restricted the sale of games with loot boxes for anyone under 21, didn't move past a single committee in the House and died out. The corresponding Senate Bill 2024 did make it into the House earlier in March, but passed no committees after that. Then, House Bill 2727, the one requiring games to have warning labels and disclose odds of rewards, managed to cross over into the Senate, but then failed to pass any further committees. Finally, the corresponding Senate Bill 3025 did survive, but it has since been repurposed for a completely unrelated subject. As the article put it, quote, Senate Bill 3025, meanwhile, originally was a companion bill to House Bill 2727. However, the House Committee on Consumer Protection and Commerce amended the bill earlier this month to remove all aspects of its previous text and replace it with a requirement for franchises to disclose if they're not participating in promotions of the franchise. For example, if a Hawaii location of a fast food restaurant chain were not included in a nationally advertised deal. So yeah, to make a long story short, all of Chris Lee's bills have all but withered away since their January introduction. Perhaps this should come as no surprise, as we have heard Chris Lee say that the ESA has been flying its lobbyists out to Hawaii to stop Chris's bills or to impede any progress in the potential regulation of gambling-like mechanics in games.
This is also part of the process where lobbyists chime in. And for several months, the ESA, the Entertainment Software Association of America, has been flying its lobbyists out to Hawaii. The ESA is the trade organization and lobbying arm of all our favorite companies, EA, Activision, Take-Two, Ubisoft, basically every major player in the gaming industry. The ESA lobbyists have been meeting behind the scenes with legislators, but what was really fascinating is to see the industry show up to lobby against the disclosing of odds in loot boxes bill.
While there are still a lot of unknown details regarding how the bills came to die, I wouldn't be at all surprised if it turned out that ESA lobbyists managed to pull some strings and achieve their desired outcome. We do know that the ESA sent out representatives like this doofus to argue for monetization schemes like loot boxes, though when he was asked the simplest of questions, he could not even come up with the simplest of justifications.
That seems to be gambling, if you can cash out these things for real monetary value. Is it not?
I cannot answer that.
Frankly, how could he? There simply is no tangible justification for this stuff beyond it being a great source of revenue at the expense of the consumers. We have also seen the ESRB try to mitigate the situation by introducing new guidelines stipulating that games with in-game purchases of any kind need to be labeled with a sticker that says in-game purchases, which is useless as it doesn't differentiate between the predatory and non-predatory forms of monetization. We have also seen a number of moronic quotes from ESRB President Patricia Vance, who said, quote, "Parents need simple information. We can't overwhelm them with a lot of detail. We need to be clear, concise, and make it easy for them." That's her justification for not being transparent about odds of loot boxes and their potentially harmful nature compared to other monetization practices. Not to mention that she continues to insist that, quote, "We think loot boxes are a fun way to acquire virtual items for use within the game," when gamers have complained time and again about the egregious implementation of these kinds of mechanisms. There is no denying that the ESA, the ESRB, and their lobbyists are doing everything they possibly can to dilute the issue rather than address it head-on, as they stand to financially gain handsomely in keeping loot boxes alive. And the news that Chris Lee's bills barely made a dent in opposition of their greedy antics was no doubt a big win for those entities and a big loss for opposing consumers. But before you feel completely deflated about this development, keep in mind that while the battle may have been lost, the war is far from over. Unprecedented ire from the gaming community alone is already making publishers and developers rethink their approach to in-game purchases in upcoming projects. More recently, we saw developments like Washington State ruling that the free-to-play game Big Fish Casino can constitute as illegal gambling under Washington state law. Keep in mind that this game doesn't work like a real casino and doesn't have traditional forms of gambling in the sense that the game's virtual currency, the chips, aren't actually worth any money. Instead, chips offer gameplay value in that you need the chips to participate in the game's chance-based activities like slots, blackjack, roulette, and whatnot to win more chips. If you run out of chips, unless you pay, you're forced to wait some time before the game hands you some free chips, exploiting people's impatience to strong-arm them into shelling out additional cash. If you think about it, this stuff really doesn't stray too far away from loot boxes found in AAA games, from what Battlefront 2 tried to pull, from titles that have players gamble for gameplay value. So that ruling opens up doors for similarly insidious forms of chance-based paid reward system to be judged with a similar level of scrutiny down the line. And speaking of Washington State, there is still that bill introduced by Senator Kevin Ranker stipulating that an investigation be conducted on whether video game loot boxes and similar mechanisms fall within the definition of gambling. Then there's New Hampshire Senator Maggie Hassan, who expressed following the ESRB's new in-game purchases label guidelines that she's still concerned about the ESRB's skepticism regarding the potentially addictive nature of loot boxes and microtransactions in video games, and that she'll continue poking and prodding at the issue. So yeah, Chris Lee's bills dying does not mean that everyone's just giving up and that things just go back to the way they were. There are still plenty of avenues that are being pursued to tackle this issue head on, and I'm sure Chris Lee himself is already looking at other ways to fight back. The loot box controversy is still very young, so it's only natural that we are at a stage where both sides are trading blows, meaning that we'll give some and we'll take some. And that's fine, because the most important thing I think is that the conversation surrounding this issue is still going strong, that it's become more relevant than ever before, that people are more vigilant about this stuff than ever before, and that publishers are more wary about pulling some shady scheme than ever before. As long as we keep fanning the flames of the conversation and continue to stay on our toes as game publishers keep attempting to nickel and dime players, as long as we continue to make our voices heard, as long as we continue to push back, I believe the status quo can change, slowly but surely. As a matter of fact, it has already changed, and it still continues to change, little by little. These are just one man's thoughts and opinions anyway. I'd love to hear what your take is on all of this in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy my content, consider supporting me on Patreon. It is completely optional, but donating even as little as $1 a month will go a long way in helping this channel grow. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Yong Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Yong out!